Hi everyone, Jeremy here, Damn Good Doctors Club. I've seen some questions coming in from a couple practitioners lately regarding process. And this is something that it's so interesting because you've got to balance out the universal and the unique. And we kind of walk into this conversation with already a frame in our head that's binary, right? It's a two-corner fallacy. Like we either do this watered down group coaching general stuff with our patients, or we do this very granular and specific one-on-one individual work, right? And I've spoken about this in the past. We have posts called The Universal and the Unique and how to balance this within the vault. There's a whole section within Damn Good program too where I go into this in greater depth. But there are things that you're going to want to start to understand, because that forced binary of universal or unique, we can bridge that. And when we do, that's when everything really gets unlocked, because that's when we can take these programs and things that are meant to be like, oh, evergreen program, and it's, kind of generic, and we can actually create something that's applicable to a lot of people, that's universal in that sense, and then find ways to make it unique for the various individuals as they go through the process. So process, I think, being the key word, because we have this balance. I know we have a lot of Eastern medicine practitioners in here. We've had a wave of functional medicine folks in the past. Not everybody that comes through here has an Eastern medicine background, so I don't always use all the jargon here, but for those of you that do already understand this, the balance between wood and metal is extremely important to start to navigate. And so if you don't have an Eastern medicine background, that's okay. You can kind of shortcut this and just look at metal is the structure and the kind of order and organization capacity, and wood has to do with growth and expansion and flexibility, right? So these aren't two things that need to oppose each other. There's a yin and yang to it. And what I would offer, and what I've discovered through my work so far, is that if you build your structure correctly, it can be strong yet also supple, right? So if you have a structure, a framework that has integrity, but also has like tensegrity, right? Where it can move in different ways, and there are different pieces of the structure that can accommodate different types of stresses, then that's where you can start to balance this out. So I know I'm speaking generally, and I'm always going to be giving context for everything. And that's something that I do. I give extra context, right? It takes more energy to write that. When people ask a question in the group and I could just answer the question with one line, of course, right? I can just say, here's the answer, right? Here's the fish. But I also want to give context so that we can start thinking differently about these things, because there are levels of understanding. And part of my job, as I've decided here, is to say, okay, it's not just like I'm just the guy who like feeds answers, right? I mean, that's not a route for growth, So basically it's one of these things where the more I kind of feed context to everybody, then the greater the quality of understanding comes up in our group. And then actually we get different kinds of questions, which then pushes me to start thinking differently too. So it's a full circle thing. So this is one of the reasons why I do it like that, is because I want to teach people to fish as well. And that also is going to push me to grow and think more deeply about things. So when we see these really highly contextual answers, right, like in our group, that's important, because you've got the unique person who's asking the one question, and then you've got the universal of the other people in the group reading along. And instead of being in a group where you can see somebody's question and think, that has nothing to do with me or any cases I'm seeing right now, right? Instead, you can look at that and go, oh, okay, this thread of a question actually pulls back to a much deeper root of understanding. And that's what the context does. It starts to expose these roots, right? We have way more leverage when we start to get to the roots of our understandings of things, and we start to expand it that way. So there's always you're going to see this balance like everywhere with me, because I don't want to do just universal. For me, that's extremely boring. I mean, don't take this as a judgment, because some people run a whole business model it's all general, like it's an evergreen program. They never have contact with the people they work with. There's no personal relationships whatsoever. And for them, that's fine. That's okay, right? You can write a book, and it can be very general and have broad appeal, and you can change people's lives that way, right? It's not a bad thing. It's just not how I choose to work, how I choose to design my environment. And it's not the other way either, right? I want a combination. I want both, because there are strengths to both. And if you start looking at some of the most powerful institutions and organizations and movements that have come through human history, they oftentimes encapsulate both of those things. And they do it in very graceful and strategic ways so that they can create a sense of community over uncommon commonalities, basically. And there's a lot of power there. I'm not going to tear into that on this post, but pretty much you have, again, another balance, another paradox, but you have a group of people that have something in common amongst that group of people, which is uncommon compared to the outside of the tribe. Right? So what we do is we balance, if you choose, right? And you can determine your own business model, right? I'm not here to here's another piece. I'm not here to stamp out like more of exactly what Jeremy's doing, like copy, copy, copy. That you can do that if you want. I have very straightforward recommendations within the program, especially the quick start stage, where I tell you, like, if I was starting from day zero, here's what I would do exactly. I would use this software to host my content. I would run a group here. I would do these things for my organic strategies. I would build my market research systems. Like, everything's laid out so you can do basically a step-by-step copy if you want. And if that gets you rolling, that's good. However, again, another piece of balance is that you don't want to be so stuck on a rigid model that you miss, right? That the map is not the territory, right? You don't want to be so stuck on a rigid model that you miss other opportunities. So already I've seen practitioners that I've mentored and I've kind of installed the frameworks and the model I have, and they get going with that, and immediately, just like in nature, there's adaptations and there's mutations, right? So if you start to look at some of the other people in the program going through, like they've built things, or some of the people I've worked one-on-one with, they're using the same kinds of principles, but if you look at their program and their ecosystem and their world, it's going to look maybe similar to what I'm doing, but there's enough of a difference that you're like, oh, this has got its own whole flavor to it. And that's how it should be, right? We can get the bones of things, right? Like every human being basically has like a skeleton that kind of conforms to phi ratios and Fibonacci sequences and things like that, right? Yet there's variations. We don't all look the same. We're not all identical clones, even though we all have bones, right? And the bones kind of all follow the same mathematical rules for the most part. Yet, I've got a big honking nose that, goes off to the side or whatever, and other people, they look different, right? Everybody's got their own kind of flavor and manifestation. So when we create programs, when we create ecosystems and paracosms, which is the world that you're building around your work, I understand, I've been on both sides of this plenty, and I understand listen, I need a place to start. Just tell me what to do to get rolling here. Like, I need guidance. I've got zero experience here, right? Or I've tried other models and they just bit the dust. I get that. So we have that. You can just start and literally I've got a quick start thing with a list of softwares, just go get these. They're minimal. They're not very expensive at all. It'll get you rolling. It'll get you proof of concept. You should be able to make an easy 6 figures with that setup. You probably won't need to change anything for a couple of years, and build on it, right? Get going with that. Of course, I'm out in front with other things, right? Nonlinear interfaces and things like that. Like, I'm doing a lot of other stuff to stay ahead, because I know when this works, like, I understand the success problems that you guys are going to have, and when this works, I want to have things pre-solved as best I can. So I'm doing a little bit different stuff. You don't have to copy exactly where I'm at now, but you do want to take what I've learned so far and then apply that to where you are now, so you don't have to make a lot of the same mistakes I did, and you can get there a lot faster with a lot less waste. So there's more context, right? Always context. But context is important. It takes time, it takes depth to go through these kinds of like immersive trainings, but that's what makes things a transformative process. Because there are plenty of people online, especially people that aim their marketing at like health practitioners, and they just have some quick thing like, hey doc, here's our template for your, here's 100 different templates you could use. You can swipe our file and you can just write this, and that'll become all your Facebook posts or your email newsletter, whatever. And it's kind of like plug and play, but that doesn't bring anything out of your actual bespoke world, right? So like, there's plenty of this stuff where you could just grab one of these little things. The trouble is, again, taking all these little pearls and kind of hoarding them, and then we don't have an overarching structure and a system to plug it into. So the way I teach this stuff and the way I pass it on, it's meant to help you grow into it and then to grow with it, right? Which is going to mean that we're going to diverge in small ways. That should be happening, just like in nature, right? These trees, they're all a little bit different from each other. It's not just like stamped out. So our practice follows natural law, that way. But by working with foundational principles, you can apply this in different ways depending on your model. So I'm going to share, because I've had questions, which I get these questions, because what I'm saying is it sounds fucking crazy, basically. It's like, hey, I've got complex chronic people that are bedbound, and I'm time independent, and I can get them better with a program that's universal and unique, right? That has general application and is extremely bespoke and specialized, and I can do it without getting on a phone call with them or having appointments, right? It's crazy. Sounds like I'm pulling a rabbit out of my hat. So I get it, and when I look back at this stuff, it's magical, really, when you look at like how it's actually kind of shaken down. And I think once you know how it works, it won't seem so far-fetched, right? But we can still look at these things and appreciate it. A lot of people don't have contrast, and that's important. So what do I mean by contrast? Well, if you have a patient, for example, who has like fibromyalgia, and let's say that they just started getting these symptoms, and that it's been like a month and they're going, oh, something's weird with me. And they just come to see you straight away and you just sort it out. And they're like, oh, thanks, it's fixed, right? That's a different situation than a patient who has had fibromyalgia for like 20 years. And they've been to all these like specialists. They've flown around to see people, these different like guru doctors. They've done all these protocols. They've been gaslit by the medical industry. They've taken like Cymbalta and things and gotten messed up worse from the drugs. Like they've been dragged through the mud basically. And then they come see you and you solve it with them, right? With a step-by-step program or whatever you're doing. And you actually like break through and make a difference in their life. That person's going to have so much contrast because they've seen the other. They've been through it. And they're like, holy fuck, what you're doing here is different and amazing. Thank you so much. Whereas the person who just kind of found you straight off the bat, they're just going to be like, oh, I guess that's normal then. I guess I should just, I don't know why everybody complains about this disease. It doesn't seem like a big deal to me. They don't have contrast, right? So depending on where you are in your career and what you've done so far with your business and how many things you've tried online and how many like mentorships and coaching and masterminds and all kind of stuff you've been a part of, you're going to have different perspective. Right? And this for me is true too, because I've been through all kinds of different things and some of them were outstanding. Some of them were outstanding at showing me what not to do, right? Some of them were horrible, like waste of money and time and everything. And, it's pretty a significant investment usually when you get into these things. So, there's a little bit of like tried and failed. And then, you got to always kind of keep finding new ways to grow. You don't give up on yourself. At least I didn't, I still don't. I'm still constantly learning, taking mentorships and further trainings and things like that. So anyway, if you don't have contrast, then you won't know. So if you've never gone online before, right? If you do go online and you do all the Zoom calls and stuff and you get your ass kicked and then, you're making money, but you're tied to your phone and everything else. And then you come into a model like this where you're like, oh my goodness, I don't have to do calls anymore. That contrast is amazing. If you've never done this before, some of the danger is you don't even really know like how much has gone into creating this kind of system and structure to where you can just kind of coast through and do things on your own time. It's incredibly liberating. But the danger is, that we may not fully appreciate just how savage of a difference it is when you're stuck to appointments, because that can be pretty rough. So anyway, how do we do this, right, without it looking like magic while still appreciating it? Because it's pretty great. I'm going to take you through 3 different cases of people, and I'm going to kind of take it from the person's perspective who came into my world. And there are a few different ways to do this. And this is exactly why. I've got, of course, a framework. Like you can plug in and just do it exactly. Here's the software. Here's this, do this, do that, do this, and then get the people in. Here's how you create an offer. Like all these things I've got for you. You can just implement them, right? Or you can evolve these things into a model that fits you and how you want to work. So I don't want to jam people in. For one example is like high ticket. I think high ticket's where it's at, right? Yet at the same time, I'm going to be testing extremely broad offers at low ticket. I do these things periodically because I want to make sure that I've got my finger on the pulse because the environment out there, the market's changing, right? So if I'm over here telling you guys like, oh, high ticket, and there's also other models, right, that are extremely high volume, low ticket. If I can find a way to do that without massive headaches, then I'll be passing that on as well. So what I'm trying to provide here are like super systems, basically, so that you can come in with whatever fits for you and go, okay, I'm fine with high ticket. I want to do that, right? But I've had practitioners come in before and they're like, listen, everything here is amazing, but I don't like charging high ticket fees. Okay, great. You don't have to, right? You don't have to do that part of the model. It's okay. There's a lot of things like that where the model can adapt to fit you. That's what I mean by this wood and metal thing. So what I've built here is a structure, which you have, right? It's solid. It's got tensegrity. Yet, it can be changed, right? It can be molded. It can be dynamic. It can respond to where you're at and how you need to plug it in. So I'll give you like 3 examples of different cases I've had through this model. I'm just going to show you like 3 different ways to apply some of these things. And it doesn't mean you have to do any of them that way, right? But you need to understand some of the building blocks that you've got at your disposal. And the other caveat here is that some of this is going to be a little bit vague. I'm sure there's going to be some unanswered questions. That's kind of the nature of this thing. That's why I've got hours and hours and hours of deep dive program content so that you can understand this stuff. So when I talk about like, for example, the application I have for my health program, right? That's 100 questions. I'm not in this video. I'm not going to go through all those 100 questions and explain to you why each one is there, what it tells me, why it's in the order that it's in, like all the design that went into that. I can't do it here. I already did it. So, that's a resource that's for our members anyway. They have it on the resources page. They can just get at that, copy it, and then improvise it, improve it, change it, modify it, whatever, however they want to evolve this thing, right? So as you get going, you've got freedom there too. You've got a structure, you've got a starting point, and then there's going to be some changes you'll make, even for your niche, right? For sure, because mine's built for complex chronic conditions. So these kinds of things are going to be, I'm giving you a caveat here, because as I explain these cases, these kinds of things are going to be vague, but that's also because I just can't do this for 10 hours on this video. You know, it's not practical. But here's how things look. So one case, there was a lady, let's call her Julie, and she was about 65 years old. She came into my brick and mortar, and she had neuropathy was her main complaint in her feet. And I did a consultation. So in this model, there was a consultation, right? Because it was my brick and mortar. So I had an appointment with her, had a consultation, and in speaking with her, it wasn't just about neuropathy, right? Because her feet were like cold, purple, all this kind of thing. She also had autoimmune conditions underlying. She had a couple different ones. And when I started to do like a full assessment with her, I realized that she wasn't just a neuropathy patient, right? She also had these underlying conditions. And I said, well, you know, I've got a program for people with complex chronic inflammatory conditions, including autoimmune. It's very comprehensive. And what I did with her was I told her about the program at her first appointment, and I said, this would be your best option, right? If you just want acupuncture, and I've spoken before about method level sales here, like if somebody comes for the method, you just want acupuncture, I can deliver acupuncture. It says it on the side of the building, right? That's what we do. That's fine. Totally fine. And you should know that I work internationally with people all over the world with these kinds of conditions. And when I do that, I don't acupuncture them at all because they live in the Netherlands and Denmark and the UK and wherever else. So I have a program with herbs and qigong and self-care and special exercises and all this kind of thing. And you know, that seems to work really well. It's comprehensive. So she was very interested in that, and she wound up signing up for the program. What I did in that case at the time, see, my rates have gone up for the program. I started out and it was like $4,800 was the price for the program. So at that point, I gave her the program and I bundled in some acupuncture treatments, I think about like 20 sessions. And that was our plan. I said, okay, it's $4,800. You get up to 20 acupunctures if you need them, and you're plugged into this program. It's got herbs and all these things and all the lessons, all the stuff I'd already recorded because I was already using it online at that point. And she did really, really well with it. And she had little blips. You know, she had some problems. She had this one really interesting kind of mental breakthrough one day because her sleep was really bad. And finally, you know, I've got a whole thing in there about sleep stuff, right? And finally one day she came in and she said, oh, I'm sleeping better. And I said, okay, well, that's good. What happened? And she said, well, what happened was I finally got so desperate that I started following basic advice, right? So we broke through some of that, you know, because it's in the program, you know, so it works, but we have secondary gains and we have these outside variables and things like that, which again is more reason why I've cultivated a world that's very psychological, because people need to understand their own psychology if they want to get better. Right? We don't want that in the way. You can have all the perfect herbs, you can have the perfect information, but if they're not hearing it, they won't let themselves hear it, right? Then you got to help them kind of unblock, like take the wax out of their ears, you know, so they can get the benefits of your program. So with her, she came through, and what she wound up doing was she did the program, which went really well. She was taking the herbs, and when she actually finished her 20 sessions of acupuncture. She re-upped for, I think, another 12-pack, and then I think she did another 24 acupuncture sessions. So in my clinic at the time, a 12-pack was $1,250, and she did 2 more of those, and she became kind of a maintenance-y acupuncture patient, and we weaned her off. You know, so over time, the gaps between her treatments kept expanding. I think by the end of it, she was probably coming in once a month, and then she was like, hey, I'm doing pretty well, and I think I'm good. And she had all the things she learned from the program, and, you know, she had my number if she needed anything else. So there's one way to do this. In that case, I had a consultation, because she came through my brick and mortar, and it was kind of a hybrid model, you know, so I had the program there to support and supplement that, because I sure couldn't be doing this at every visit with her, you know, and telling her all the things that I have in my program of, you know, hours of me explaining different things, especially the sleep, right? Because why would I be in the office, think about this, why would I be in the office telling her all the sleep hygiene stuff when she's already saying to herself, well, that's simple, it's not going to work for me. My sleep problem must be complicated. So I must need a complicated solution, right? I'm going to ignore all the stuff this guy's saying. I didn't have to do any of that. I just let my digital clone say all the things, and then when she was actually ready to hear it, she went back and listened to the videos again, right? So there's a strength there. So that was one. And then another one that we should probably talk about, let's call her Barbara, again in her 60s, and she found me totally online. She lived in the Midwest and one of those flat states, right? And she was like, oh, there's nothing out here. It's kind of a boring, quiet life, but I still am missing out on all of it because I feel like shit, right? So she was, again, I think she had a fibromyalgia diagnosis, and she was, again, like very inflamed. It had been, decades of that, and kind of bedridden, weird pains. I think she also had foot neuropathy too. And the fatigue, the brain fog, all the things that people have with these complex chronic cases. And so she found me on Facebook. And the way she found me on Facebook was I was doing exactly to the letter what I share with you guys. I've got stuff in the program on this, but like I put it in the vault even. Concrete ways to get new patients. Like I was doing exactly what I described in that post. And we don't have to make this harder than it has to be, right? So I was posting in groups and I was just sharing valuable stuff, and she found me, right? There was no like weird solicitation or anything, no creepy DM messages, no salesy shit, nothing like that. I had a group going. She got in the group and she signed up for the program. She was in the group for a few weeks. She started going through my vault, and there was, momentum and other people in there, and everybody was getting excited about the possibility of actually like healing or getting some of their life back. And she felt that group energy, right? So I never once had an appointment with her. She went through and got her application in, which is about, like I said, about 100 questions. And I've designed it that way so that I can then extract, when I sit down with those things, I extract the information and I make a plan for the person. So I'm looking at universal healing algorithms, basically, like, okay, if this, then that, if this, then that, and if not this, then this, and just I have that mapped in my mind, and I can do things on software, on paper, and you can look at the application coming in, you can start to match up the clinical picture, and then you go, okay, these are the herbs that she should start with, and most likely where this is going to go. And so I sent her a whole package of herbs in the mail. That was her starter kit, and she followed the program, and she would report back in the group, different little wins, different challenges. If she had a question, she would ask a question in the group, and I would answer her specific question in the group while also including context, so the other people in the group weren't glazing over while they were reading it, right? They were going, oh yeah, I don't have that exact problem, but that mechanism behind that problem, I think that's also part of my life too, right? So, for example, maybe this wasn't this lady specifically, but for example, when somebody has a toxic family member, right, like a mother-in-law that's an energy vampire or something, narcissist, right, and that's giving them stress, and then they're having digestive problems, right, and they're, oh, how do I fix my digestion? And then we start talking, and I say, okay, well, this is what happens with boundaries and all this. Now I got everybody else in the group that maybe doesn't have digestive issues, that unique manifestation, but they also share this uncommon commonality of having a narcissistic person or bad boundaries or whatever else. So we're working on healing and bringing up the whole collective at once via the individual asking the question. It's a skill, okay? It's not easy. You got to practice this. You got to develop it, and you've got to become contextually literate and become an architect to that. So anyway, that's what we did with her. She was in my program for 1 year. She made the annual commitment. By the end of that year, she was ready to go traveling and having vacations and everything else. She was also being romantic with her husband again, which had been a long time for that. So that was cool. She was sharing some of those wins about how their relationship was getting more spark to it. I wouldn't know this lady if I bumped into her on the street, right? I saw her picture for her initial application, but it's not like I look at that every single day. I know her from her stories and from what she shared, and you can do this, right, without having to have consultations, FaceTime, anything like that. She actually sent me, after she exited out of the program, she actually sent me like a thank you card in the mail, that was like nice and signed and everything and all this. So you can have real connections with people. Like real connections, and you use the internet to do that, right? We leverage the technology so that it doesn't suck our souls out. So there's another one. And the third one I was going to share is kind of this is creative, okay? You don't have to, again, why I'm showing you this is because I talked about a hybrid model of having this infused in your practice, and I talked about doing it totally online. And now the third way, very creative, you don't have to do this, but I'm showing you different ways to apply this kind of thinking, is in 2018, I put together a group of 40 practitioners, thereabouts, a little over 40, I think. And they're all over the country. And what we did was they had licensure of my program. They became like affiliates, basically, where they could license out my program. So their patients could come through, and if they had somebody with Lyme disease or mold exposure or fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue or something like that, they could take that new patient that they were having an in-office consult with, and they could provide a treatment plan that included them doing acupuncture and me delivering all the patient education, herbs, logistics, all that stuff was handled. And at the time we did a split, so it was $4,800 is what the patient would pay, and the practitioner got half of that. and I got the other half, right? So the other half was the licensing fee for the program, and that covered the herbal starter kit and things like that. So that was a really cool way to get started. And I still have practitioners that are taking advantage of that even to this day. I've focused more on kind of building my own thing and not so much of the affiliate model, but they're still out there. There's a few of them that it's amazing, right? They're still getting results with patients. So the case study I'll share with this one is a lady, and we're going to have to call her Lisa. And she was, again, in her 60s. And she came in to see her acupuncturist. And he had recently gotten on board with what I was doing. And he now was offering my program through his office. And he saw her and he went, holy smokes, I've been treating you for like 3 years. And I know there's something else that we're going to have to do to correct this case, because she wasn't quite responding. This lady was bedbound like none other. I mean, she could get up and go to the mail. She could check her mail on a good day. She would go get her mail and go back to bed. On a bad day, there was no getting the mail, right? And a sweet lady too. She was I actually talked to her. We did a follow-up. We did a Skype call just so I could kind of get her story, right? I recorded it. We made like a testimonial video out of it. But I had never met her up until that point, right? So what happened was, he enrolled her in the program, and he took his fee for that, and then I took the licensing fee for the program, and he continued to provide acupuncture for her, and she got wildly better. And even the logistics there was, I just had a very straightforward herbal protocol basically, and I just sent her the herbs for that, and he managed her case on the day-to-day level, but I provided all the infrastructure, the program, the herbs, and all those kinds of things. And then I was there obviously when he had questions about, she's starting to zig, should we zag? And I was like, yeah, we should. Here's how, that kind of thing. But basically it leaned on the clinical clarity algorithms that I had. And that was really cool because it was basically like co-treating this patient. And again, never met her, right? I had no idea what she looked like. I was just hearing good feedback from the practitioner. And then I got on a call with her, and man, she was a ball of sunshine. Her whole life changed, and she was the kind of person who was really, really sick and didn't even know she was sick because she just thought that was aging, and this is just aging. And then she started talking to her sister, who was also aging, and her sister was like, I don't have any of that. I don't feel any of that stuff. I'm still living my life. And she went, I've actually got a problem here. So, we snapped her out of it. We broke the spell. But how I did that was I delivered, again, online program. Information is so powerful. The right information, organized in the right way, for the right people, at the right time, with the right structure around it, that gave her the empowerment to get her life back, right? Because she'd been doing acupuncture for years. And it's not like the practitioner was a bad practitioner. He knows his stuff. He's seasoned. Been in the game longer than I have,
Part of what I included in it as my part of the thing was to say, I'm going to give you 24 visits for acupuncture, but she lives about an hour away from me. So I said, now acupuncture is an adjunct to the program. It is not the program. It's going to be all online, and it's going to be your herbs, and it's going to be your self-management, your breathing, all these activities you're going to be doing. I'll be here to coach you, and I'll be here as an adjunct if you want acupuncture. All right. But that's really the program. And she was kind of like, well, if I don't have to drive an hour, I'm happy with that. And I said, well, okay, that's good. That's, and so we would text every day. We would just kind of text. She started the program right off the bat. She had questions. She would text me. Maybe every third day we talked for about 5 minutes on the phone. That, and she came in twice in 3 weeks.
Wow. I mean, within 2.5, 3 weeks, it's just like my pain was gone. I mean, I could move, I could walk, I could do things that I'd not done, for a while. So I was so excited. I'm still excited. I tell everybody, I feel like a brand new person.
Sometimes it's just a matter of how you kind of come at the person's system. So I was very happy to have these things in place already, right? These processes in place. So there's a few different applications for this, and there are more that I'm sure you can think of or you can get creative with. But again, it's going to come down to like your bandwidth for implementing stuff. So if you do need a place to start, don't involve affiliate clinics. Don't involve licensing out your program, right? One of the easiest things to start with is a hybrid model where you've already got people coming into your office, and now you just have another offering, and you can actually build it organically that way. It's basically just going to be a bridge to becoming online more. Is like you start with your office and you go, okay, what do the people need that are coming in here? Even if you don't feel like you're specialized, look at the universal, right? What do the humans need? And then you can specialize down from there. Like I've done other videos about frameworks and the illusion of specialization, and you can start specializing in not even a disease and not even a symptom. You can just start specializing in like the types of people or the region of the country that you live in or the vertical within your niche. Or another one is specialized within a pattern, right? Oh, I'm really good at yin deficiency. I'm really good at chi stagnation. I'm really good at dampness, whatever that is, right? And it's going to manifest different ways. And then you just have filtering set up. So when you see people come in, if you're like, I'm the guy, right? Or I'm the lady who specializes in yin deficiency, and you've got new people coming in and you see their tongue and it's like, looks like it's covered in mayonnaise, then you go, refer, right? You're not going to fit my frameworks. I'm focused on yin deficiency, right? Or you see enough of those greasy tongues, then you start to go, okay, I need to have another bucket, right? I can have a good yin deficiency, clinical clarity algorithm and protocols and kind of the way to weave that together in my mind, but I also need to look at these damp people and then mixed patterns and whatever, and it can grow from there. Because ultimately, your specialization and your market differentiation is going to wax and wane. It's going to expand and compress. And oftentimes, where we start is we start with this really expanded thing, and it's like the jack of all trades kind of thing. It's like, well, I want to treat everything. I want to help everybody, which is great. And then the advice is to dial that in and focus, which is also great. But then what happens after that is you start to focus on certain things, and then you start to discover within the unique area of focus, you start to discover universal principles. And then it's like, hey, I can expand again now with a broader base, but it's not going to be weak. I can expand in a very strong way. And then you continue to kind of do this like refinement. That happens. I think we have pulses of specialization over our career arc. So it depends kind of where you're at on that ride. Because some people come in and they say like, oh, Jeremy, I know I need a niche. I know I need to specialize. Do you? Right? I mean, maybe. Like, it's good advice generally, but within your unique situation, like where are you? What are you already specialized? You don't know it. Like maybe you're just really specialized in treating people with greasy tongues, or maybe you're really specialized in having a comprehensive plan for human bodies. I got in an argument with a very highly regarded clinical supervisor when I was a student. He was trying to give me advice about specializing, and I was like, that's great, but like I already am specialized. I'm specialized in Eastern medicine. I'm specialized in my tool set. I was headstrong. I was young then, but I wasn't entirely wrong either. So there are some of the processes. There's a lot to this in terms of understanding the technicals, like, okay, this is the software, right? Like, for example, we're using, currently as I'm post this, we're using Signal for Doctors Club. Now, there's two types of ways you can run groups, right? There's feed style, like Signal, WhatsApp, right? Chat group, Facebook messages, group text, SMS on your phone, right? Any of those things where it just goes up and down. And then there's forum style, like a Facebook group would be the most kind of widely used one, right? These forums. And there's pros and cons with those different things. If you have a forum, usually you're going to have a little bit of more of a hassle for the login for your users, right? And none of these things are deal breakers for either way. And I've gone back and forth on them. And if this is something where everybody in the Doctors Club says, hey man, we want to use a forum style thing, we need to get off this feed style Signal, I'm open to it, right? We can have that conversation like at our summit events or, whatever. You guys aren't going to freak me out with mutiny. I'm all for providing things that are flexible and work. But some of the reasons and why I'm sharing this is because if you're going to start a group, you need to be aware of these things on the other side when you're the one running the group, is that there are all kinds of details and idiosyncrasies to the decisions you make around how you're going to run that, feed style or form style. And with apps that people are already using, like WhatsApp, Signal's pretty popular. It's already on their phone, and there's no like going to a website or whatever. They can just open it, and like my health group, I use WhatsApp for that currently, and most people already have it on their phone. So I'm not asking them to go through one more barrier of installing something. Although some people do have to install WhatsApp, some people have to install Signal. Like I get it, it's not perfect, but you're getting that kind of thing happening where it's smooth and easy and you're taking away some of the friction. And that's a conscious decision that I made. There are other reasons why we're using vertical scrolling feed style app. And one of them is that everybody comes in, and when you come in new, you get a new start. If you come into a forum and everything's saved and archived in there, you come in and there's already a lot of stuff to fish around in the group. And there's pros and cons to this. But the decision I've made currently is that if someone's in the group, they don't know who's ever going to come in there again, right, in the future. So they're posting, sharing things and whatever. And you need to know that the stuff that you share, like in Signal, is only readable by people that are currently in here. If you're, for example, not that we should be afraid of this, but if you've got a competitor down the street, another, acupuncturist or whatever, and they join our group a year from now, they're not going to get to see the stuff you wrote today. So there's a bit of anonymity and there's a bit of kind of protection built in with that so that you can share openly, knowing that only the people that are here now are the ones that can see it. And if you put it in a forum, then it can get a little weird when people come in and see something you shared in a forum 3 years ago and you've changed and you've grown since then, right? Or there's something that maybe you feel vulnerable about something you shared and maybe you can't delete it depending on the way things are set up, right? So what I've got is basically it's like, we write to each other in invisible ink in our group. But guess what? Anything that needs to stay, stays, because I'll take these ideas and I'll answer them in an insight post, or they become part of the program content, or something like that, right? So there's a lot of stuff in the group that kind of can come and go, and it's for right now. And so if we change it to a forum style, you lose some of that, right? You lose some of that temporal nature, it's a consideration. It really is. And I get the idea of trying to hoard everything. Right, Jeremy, why do you want to let it be so effervescent, right? And just let it go. Well, because we need to respect that, right? That's one part. And we want to hoard everything just because we want to collect stuff just in case. And some of this is a different mindset of going, okay, I want to collect the things that are appropriate for my patient base, right? I want to actually collect the information that can feed itself into my schema or my program or my frameworks, right? Because then I can actually use it. It's not just collecting pearls for pearls' sake. Right? Because we get this little bit of a collector mentality, which is fine. I have it too. I still have it. And what I'm doing with this is kind of like a preview for later this year, is I'm building out systems where you won't have to worry about that. Everything will be collected anyway, and it'll be anonymous, and you can find the information that you need or want when it's actually relevant. So I'm going to be replacing the kind of grab it and hoard it and collect the shiny pearl mindset with actually just like being very nimble and lean with what we need to hold on to, but being able to access anything, anytime, and in a way that makes sense with our algorithms and our clinical clarity thinking. I know this is a little bit ahead, but these are all considerations you want to make, right? So when you're starting up a group, keep it simple. You can follow some of my recommendations in terms of software in the program. Like, here's what I do for a group. Like, even just use WhatsApp or something, make it very, very easy. You don't have to start getting all these different softwares like Circle and things you don't have to start doing that. Circle's going to take a bunch of your money anyway off you. So it might not sound like a lot, but when they start charging you an extra 3%, right? Now you're paying 3% to Stripe, 3% to Circle. You're losing 6% of your sales. It starts to add up. If you're doing a $7,500 high ticket annual membership and now you're paying what is that going to be, like $800 or something, $600? No thanks, right? So there are a lot of considerations. So when you're building this thing, try to keep it simple. Try to keep it straightforward. It's a balance, right? Without sacrificing specificity and without sacrificing being comprehensive. And this is why I'm always giving context, because I don't want to trap you into a model. I want to give you the very sound foundational legs and skeletal structure of a model, and then let you know, okay, here's the structure, here's why these things are in place. Now that requires deep dives. That's why it's in the program, for hours and hours of going into all this stuff. So now you know why, but that way you know what rules to break and how to adapt things when your situation changes or you have a different vision or whatever. That way you're not out floundering because you had to throw away the baby with the bathwater. Okay? This is life. This is nature. We have to adapt. So there are 3 case studies, 3 stories about what it's like when people kind of come through your world. And again, none of this would have been possible for me or for these patients or for the other practitioners I was working with, on those cases, if I didn't have the systems in place that were flexible and able to be plugged in and kind of modulated in different ways, right? And of course, having that stuff ahead of time was extremely helpful, but there's also a lot of power in building it as you go, because then you'll have a bridge that's very bespoke to the people that are actually asking for your help right now. So that's powerful. All right, get to work.